Greetings and welcome once more to the Haunting Hour channel. Please like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel before viewing. Enjoy your time while viewing. The sterile air of the airport terminal hung heavy, thick with the nervous energy of hundreds of people all funneled through the same metallic maze. Each cough or dropped suitcase echoed with an amplified anxiety that resonated deeply within me. My hands trembled as I gripped the warm leather of my carry-on, my heart a frantic drum solo against my ribs. Flying. The very word sent a tremor of dread through me. Turbulence, the thought of being trapped, thousands of feet above the ground, completely out of control. It was a recurring nightmare made real every time I needed to get somewhere fast. This wasn't a pleasure trip, though. Mom! The sharp edges of that word cut through the already suffocating atmosphere. Her once vibrant green eyes, now dulled by a relentless illness, were the only reason I stood here, stomach churning, fighting the urge to turn and bolt. A disembodied voice crackled through the PA system, announcing a delay. My breath hitched. Another hour trapped in this tense limbo. A wave of nausea washed over me, building on the foundation of fear. Dizziness blurred my vision, and the world around me began to swim. Migraine, I muttered, the word a confirmation of my impending misery. Reaching into my purse with trembling fingers, I searched for my medication, the one thing that could offer a sliver of relief. Panic clawed at my throat. Empty. I'd emptied the bottle at home, convinced the flight would be smooth, convinced I wouldn't need it. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, blurring the already distorted scene. Finding a secluded bathroom stall became my only goal. As I locked myself in, the fluorescent light seemed to amplify the pounding in my head. Leaning against the cool tile wall, I tried to take deep, calming breaths, but the confined space only heightened my claustrophobia. Squeezing my eyes shut, I yearned for darkness, for silence. A faint metallic scrape jolted me. I opened my eyes to see a flicker of movement in the reflection above the sink. Disoriented, I blinked, attributing it to my blurry vision. But the movement persisted, a wisp of darkness at the edge of my reflection. Must be the migraine, I thought, forcing myself to relax. Closing my eyes again, I counted breaths, willing the throbbing in my head to subside. A low, almost inaudible whisper snaked into my ear, vaguely audible over the pounding in my skull. "Join us," it hissed, the voice a distorted echo of my own. A shiver ran down my spine. I peeked open one eye, heart hammering against my ribs. The reflection stared back, a darker, more menacing version of myself. But it wasn't just the shadows playing tricks. Its mouth was twisted in a chilling smile, eyes gleaming with a malice entirely foreign to mine. Panic clawed at my throat. "This is stupid," I rasped, willing my voice to sound strong. "Just migraine hallucinations." The reflection leaned closer, its grin widening. "There's no escape," it rasped, the voice now undeniably distinct, filled with an unsettling hunger. My breath hitched. This wasn't a hallucination. It was real. But how could it be? Fear choked me. A primal scream lodged in my throat. The reflection lunged, darkness billowing from its form. Just as it reached for me, the world dissolved into a swirling black vortex. The last thing I saw, the horrifying grin splitting the face in the mirror. Consciousness returned slowly, like a film reel stuttering back to life. A dull throbbing echoed in my head, a lingering reminder of the migraine. But the suffocating dread was gone, replaced by a confusing mix of disorientation and a gnawing sense of unease. I blinked, taking in my surroundings. Still the cold, sterile bathroom stall. Relief washed over me, momentarily pushing aside the memory of the horrifying encounter. Maybe, just maybe, It was a product of my overwrought imagination, fueled by stress and the harsh fluorescent lights. But then I saw it, a smear of crimson staining the white porcelain sink. My breath hitched. Blood, not the dull, dried residue of a scraped knee, but a fresh, glistening stain. Panic bloomed in my chest, choking the fragile tendrils of logic. The reflection, it couldn't have been a hallucination. The blood, a gruesome confirmation of its chilling presence. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the already horrifying sight. Tears. My hand flew to my face, encountering a dampness that confirmed my fear. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, begging me to run to escape this nightmare. But where would I go? Mom, the thought of her frail figure waiting for me, fueled a surge of determination. I had to get out of here, and I had to get to her. Taking a shaky breath, I pushed myself upright, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to pull me back down. My legs felt like jelly, but I managed to stumble to the sink, washing away the tears that burned my cheeks. The reflection remained, the darkness swirling around its edges. This time, however, its expression was one of mockery. Didn't like our little game. It hissed, the voice echoing in the cramped space. I forced myself to meet its gaze, my voice hoarse when I finally spoke. What? What do you want? The reflection's smile widened, revealing a chilling glint of something sharp and unnatural. To join us, it rasped, the words laced with a malevolent glee. To become one of us. Terror threatened to consume me, but the image of Mom, her face gaunt and pale, fueled a desperate defiance. No, I whispered, the words shaking but firm. I won't let you. The reflection's smile faltered, a flicker of surprise crossing its distorted features. You have no choice, it hissed, its voice laced with a newfound venom. Ignoring the fear that threatened to paralyze me, I reached into my bag, searching for anything that could offer a semblance of defense. My hand closed around a small travel-sized bottle of hand sanitizer, a pathetic offering against the darkness staring back at me. Maybe not, I retorted, my voice gaining strength despite the tremor in my limbs. Raising the bottle high, I aimed the nozzle at the reflection. But I won't go down without a fight. The reflection recoiled as if struck, a guttural screech echoing through the cramped space. A wave of acrid smoke filled the air, momentarily obscuring my vision. When it cleared, the bathroom was empty. The reflection, the blood all gone. Only the lingering stench of burnt alcohol and the pounding of my terrified heart remained as stark reminders of the horrifying encounter. Was it real, or had the stress and worry pushed me over the edge? The questions remained unanswered, but a cold fear settled in my gut. Leaving the bathroom felt like stepping into a minefield, unsure when or where the next attack might come. But I had to get to my mom. Stepping out of the bathroom stall felt like venturing onto a battlefield. The cacophony of the airport terminal washed over me, a jarring contrast to the sterile silence I'd just left behind. Every glance, every flicker of movement felt like a potential threat. The reflection's chilling words echoed in my mind. Join us. The image of the distorted face, the unnatural glint in its eyes, sent shivers down my spine. Was that all a hallucination, fueled by the migraine and the stress? Or was something truly malevolent lurking within the airport walls, preying on the vulnerable? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through me. But I forced it down, shoving the lingering questions aside for a moment. Mom was waiting, her fragile health a ticking clock against my growing fear. Ignoring the pounding in my head, I set off in search of an attendant. The lone lines snaked their way across the polished floor, each person a potential trigger for another episode. I needed to get out of this chaotic environment, back to the sterile safety of the gate. The supposed safety, at least. Reaching the head of a line, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Spinning around, I braced myself for another encounter with the darkness. But it was just a harried-looking woman with a baby strapped to her chest. "Excuse me," she said apologetically, "but are you in line for the delayed Denver flight?" Relief washed over me, momentarily erasing the lingering terror. "Yes," I replied, my voice a shaky whisper. "Is there any update?" "Another hour, at least," she sighed, her shoulders slumping. An hour trapped in this nerve-wracking environment. My stomach churned, but the thought of Mom spurred me on. "Have you seen anything strange around here?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a murmur. The woman frowned, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Strange? You mean besides the delays?" She scanned my face before continuing. "Look, honey, are you all right? You seem a bit out of sorts." Taking a deep breath, I decided to play it safe. "Just a long day," I mumbled, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Thanks, though." With the woman satisfied, I joined the queue, my mind swirling with questions and anxieties. The blood in the bathroom stall wasn't my imagination. But was it the reflection, something else entirely? And what exactly did it want from me? A faint scratching sound came from behind me. My breath hitched. Reaching into my purse, I clutched the hand sanitizer with a white-knuckle grip, ready to face whatever nightmare might be approaching. "Lost something?" a cheerful voice asked. I turned, heart pounding, to see a young man holding a crumpled boarding pass. Relief flooded my system, leaving me weak in the knees. "No," I mumbled, forcing a smile. "Just thought I heard something." He shrugged, oblivious to my internal turmoil. "These delays can really mess with your head," he said with a chuckle. His words were a stark reminder of the doubt nagging me. Maybe, just maybe, the entire ordeal was a stress-induced delusion, but the cold, lingering fear refused to fade. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the terminal tightened. Whispers of frustration and irritation filled the air, a volatile cocktail of emotions that mirrored my own growing unease. I needed to get out of here, to escape the oppressive atmosphere and find some semblance of peace. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the loudspeaker crackled to life, announcing that boarding for the Denver flight would begin shortly. Grabbing my carry-on, I surged forward with the crowd, desperate to get past security and onto the plane. As I shuffled through the scanner, the harsh light momentarily blinded me. Opening my eyes, I braced myself for the familiar security procedures. But instead of a uniformed official, I found a blank space. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it another trick of the mind? Before I could dwell on the strangeness, another voice cut through the confusion. "Moving along, please, ma'am," a gruff voice barked. A uniformed officer stood there, impatiently waving me through. Relief washed over me, chasing away the lingering doubts. Perhaps the stress truly was getting the best of me. With a shaky breath, I boarded the plane, the familiar rumble of the engines strangely comforting. Settling into my seat, I closed my eyes, willing away the remnants of fear. Maybe, just maybe, this was the end of the nightmare. The plane lurched into the sky, the familiar ascent a symphony of churning engines and trembling metal. Despite the turbulence churning in my stomach, a sense of relief washed over me. Every mile we climbed felt like another layer of separation from the unsettling events at the airport. Closing my eyes, I tried to relax. Sleep, blessed sleep, was the escape I desperately craved. Yet the unsettling events lingered in my mind like a recurring nightmare. The flickering reflection, the mocking voice, the blood, were they real or a figment of a stressed and sleep-deprived mind? A shiver ran down my spine as I remembered the blank space at security. Maybe it was just a temporary glitch, a technical malfunction. But the timing, the unsettling feeling, it fueled the lingering suspicion that something else was at play. Trying to distract myself, I reached for my book, hoping the familiar comfort of fiction would soothe my frayed nerves. But as I flipped through the pages, the words blurred, my attention constantly drawn to the shadows flickering in the overhead compartment. Just a trick of the light, I assured myself, gripping the armrests tighter. Then, a distinct scratching sound echoed from above, like something clawing at the metal. My heart hammered against my ribs, my breath catching in my throat. "Excuse me," I stammered, turning towards the woman in the next seat. She was engrossed in her tablet, completely oblivious. Gathering my courage, I tapped her shoulder. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "Yes?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, gesturing to the overhead compartment. A scratching sound. She frowned, tilting her head in thought. "No," she replied, a hint of suspicion creeping into her gaze. "Are you all right? You seem a little on edge." I forced a smile, the gesture feeling brittle and unconvincing. "Just a long day," I mumbled, looking away. The woman studied me for a moment, then returned to her tablet, a silent understanding in her eyes. Was I losing it? Was all of this an elaborate meltdown brought on by anxiety and fear? Suddenly, the scratching sound intensified, a frantic clawing desperate for escape. Panic gripped me. Ignoring the woman's startled gasp, I lunged out of my seat, shouting for an attendant. A flight attendant materialized beside me, her eyes widening at the urgency in my voice. "What seems to be the problem, ma'am?" she asked, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to my escalating fear. "The overhead compartment," I stammered, breathing heavily. Something's trapped in there." The attendant looked at the compartment, then back at me. "There's nothing there, ma'am," she said gently. "Perhaps you're just a bit stressed." Stress. Was that it? The doubt gnawed at me, but the scratching had stopped as abruptly as it began. Confused and ashamed, I mumbled an apology and returned to my seat. The rest of the flight was a blur. Fatigue and lingering fear battled for dominance, leaving me drained and disoriented. As we finally touched down, I disembarked, the familiar scent of the tarmac doing little to ease the turmoil within me. Reaching the terminal, I scanned the crowd, desperately searching for Mom's familiar face. Relief flooded my system as I spotted her huddled in a waiting area, her face etched with worry. "Mom!" I cried, rushing towards her. She looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. Tears welled in her eyes as she pulled me into a tight embrace. "There you are, honey. I was so worried." The warmth of her embrace, the familiar scent of her perfume, anchored me back to reality. For a moment, the horrors of the airport faded away, replaced by the comforting presence of family. "How was your flight?" she asked, her voice laced with concern as she pulled back. "It was a bit long," I mumbled, unable to bring myself to share the unsettling events. Now, with her beside me, they seemed more like a feverish dream than reality. But as I looked into her eyes, a flicker of something dark, something familiar, sent a shiver down my spine. Was it just exhaustion playing tricks on my mind, or had the nightmare just begun? The uncertainty gnawed at me, a chilling whisper of doubt amidst the warmth of reunion. Mom's frail embrace felt like a lifeline as we navigated the bustling airport terminal. Every flickering light, every unexpected sound triggered a jolt of anxiety, the events at the airport leaving a raw nerve exposed. "Honey, you all right?" Mom asked, her brow furrowed in concern. Her voice a familiar anchor in this unsettling tide of fear, eased some of the tension in my shoulders. Just tired, I mumbled, forcing a smile. But the lie felt heavy on my tongue. Exhaustion was one thing, the creeping fear of something more sinister entirely different. The drive home was shrouded in a tense silence. I wanted to confide in Mom, to tell her about the reflection, the blood, the terrifying whispers. But the fear of sounding crazy, of worrying her further, kept the words locked in my throat. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed something odd. The curtains in my childhood bedroom, usually drawn shut since Mom took ill, were wide open, revealing an empty room bathed in an unnatural, flickering light. A knot of dread formed in my stomach. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "did you open the curtains in my room?" She shook her head, confusion clouding her features. "Honey, I haven't been upstairs all day. You know I can't manage the stairs anymore." The implications of her words sent a shiver down my spine. We exchanged a worried glance, and a silent agreement formed. We had to investigate. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the doorknob, the old wood cool and familiar under my trembling fingers. As I pushed the door open, a wave of stale air and a faint, metallic tang washed over me. The flickering light emanated from inside the room. Cautiously, I stepped forward, Mom close behind me. The source, a broken bedside lamp, its exposed bulb sparking erratically. Relief flooded my system, momentarily pushing back the fear. "See?" I said, forcing a lightness to my voice. "Just a broken lamp." Mom, however, wasn't convinced. Her gaze swept the room, lingering on the neatly folded clothes on the bed. Clothes I hadn't touched in years. "But the curtains," she murmured, her voice laced with unease. "And everything is tidy." My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this the result of another delusion brought on by stress? Or was there something more at play? Suddenly, a soft scratching noise echoed from beneath the bed. My breath hitched. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my body tensing. Mom nodded, her eyes widening with a newfound fear. The rational explanation of a stray animal fled my mind, replaced by the chilling memory of the scratching sound on the plane. "Let's check it out," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor coursing through my limbs. Bending down, I peeked beneath the bed. Darkness met my gaze, the dust particles swirling in the faint light from the window. "There's nothing there," I mumbled, trying to sound convincing, even to myself. But the doubt lingered, a cold, slithering sensation spreading through my gut. Mom reached out and squeezed my shoulder. "Maybe we should leave it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Maybe it's nothing." The thought of leaving whatever lurked beneath the bed untouched sparked a fresh wave of terror. I had to know. With a shaky breath, I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer next to the bed and shone it beneath the frame. Silence. Darkness. The air hung heavy with an unsettling stillness. A wave of disappointment washed over me, mingled with a nagging sense of unease. Had my fear run away with me again? Just as I straightened up, the light flickered, plunging the room into darkness. A guttural screech echoed from beneath the bed, a sound that sent chills down my spine and ripped through the fragile veil of normalcy. "Mom!" I screamed, scrambling back, adrenaline surging through my system. "Honey!" she cried out, her voice filled with fear. In the blinding darkness, panic threatened to consume me. But then the light flickered back on, revealing an empty space beneath the bed. There was nothing there, nothing but the echo of a horrifying scream and the cold, hard knot of fear in the pit of my stomach. Had my imagination conjured the sound, or was it a chilling confirmation of a sinister presence lurking just beyond the reach of the light? Looking into Mom's wide, frightened eyes, I knew we wouldn't find answers here. Not tonight. We needed a plan, a way to fight back against whatever was happening. But what? How do you fight something you can't even see? As we left the room, a heavy silence settled between us. Mom shuffled down the stairs, each step a testament to her declining health. The fear I felt for her now intertwined with the chilling terror of the unknown. Back downstairs, curled up on the couch with Mom, I tried desperately to formulate a plan. "Honey," Mom said, her voice shaky but resolute, "we need help." Relief washed over me. It wasn't just my imagination running wild. But from who? She pondered for a moment, her brow furrowed in thought. "Aunt Clara," she finally said, her voice gaining strength. "She's always been perceptive. Maybe she can shed some light on all this." Aunt Clara, Mom's eccentric sister, had always been a bit of a mystery. Whispers of her interest in the unseen world had followed her throughout her life, often dismissed as harmless eccentricity. But in our current situation, eccentricity might be exactly what we needed. Despite my initial reservations, the idea sparked a flicker of hope. We couldn't face this alone. Reaching for my phone, I dialed Aunt Clara's number. After a few rings, a voice crackled through the receiver, gravelly and laced with a touch of amusement. "Well, well, well," Aunt Clara's voice echoed. "If it isn't my favorite niece, to what do I owe the pleasure of this late-night call?" Taking a deep breath, I recounted the events at the airport and the unsettling happenings at home, my voice a tremor in the silence. Aunt Clara listened patiently, a faint hum occasionally filling the space between my words. "Sounds like you've stumbled onto something nasty," she finally said, her voice devoid of its usual joviality. "Something that needs cleansing." Cleansing. The word hung in the air, a foreign concept in the face of the raw terror I felt. But before I could question her further, she continued. "Come see me tomorrow," she instructed. "Bring everything you can remember about the reflection, the blood, anything. We'll see if we can't figure out what you're dealing with." With a heavy heart, I hung up the phone. Sleep was a distant prospect as I lay awake, the unnerving image of the distorted reflection playing on repeat behind my closed eyelids. The events were escalating, becoming more real, more dangerous. One thing was clear. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. We needed answers, and Aunt Clara, with her unconventional methods, might be our only hope. Dawn's light painted the sky a tentative pink as we pulled into Aunt Clara's driveway. Her rambling Victorian house, shrouded in an overgrown garden, looked even eerier than usual in the hazy morning light. A shiver ran down my spine as we approached the rickety porch. Mom, pale and drawn, leaned heavily on my arm. The events of the past few days had taken a toll on her, etching worry lines even deeper into her already fragile face. "Ready?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and determination. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the weathered wooden door. The wait that followed stretched into eternity. Just as doubt began to gnaw at me, the door creaked open, revealing Aunt Clara herself. Her age-worn face, etched with a network of wrinkles, held a sharp glint that seemed to pierce through my defenses. "Well, well," she drawled, her voice raspy, but surprisingly strong. "Come in, come in. You both look like you've seen a ghost." We stepped through the doorway into a labyrinthine hallway cluttered with dusty antique furniture and overflowing bookshelves. The air hung heavy with the scent of incense and something else, something herbal and slightly acrid. Mom, Dad. A young girl's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Aunt Clara chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Don't worry, dear, just the neighbors' noisy brats. Come, let's get down to business. She led us into a dimly lit room, the walls adorned with strange symbols and cryptic paintings. A pungent smoke filled the air, emanating from a small, ornately carved brazier in the corner. Tell me everything, Aunt Clara commanded, gesturing towards a pair of threadbare armchairs. We settled in, the worn fabric creaking under our weight. As I recounted the events of the past few days, the reflections' chilling words, the blood in the bathroom stall, the unsettling occurrences at home, Aunt Clara listened intently, her gaze never wavering from my face. Mom chipped in, her voice trembling slightly as she described the flickering light and the sound under the bed. When I finished, a heavy silence settled in the room, broken only by the crackling fire in the brazier. Aunt Clara leaned back in her chair, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. It sounds like you've encountered a malevolent entity, she finally said, her voice grave. Something parasitic, feeding on your fear. The word parasitic sent a fresh wave of terror coursing through me. Fear. Was it feeding on my fear, manipulating my mind? It explained the escalation, the growing intensity of the encounters. But why me? I croaked, the question a desperate plea for an explanation. Perhaps it's drawn to your vulnerability, Aunt Clara replied, her gaze shifting towards Mom. The closer you get to her, well, let's just say some entities aren't too keen on goodbyes. A cold realization washed over me. Mom's illness, my frantic state, the entity was seizing the opportunity to feed, to gain a foothold. We weren't just fighting for myself, but for Mom, for the precious time we had left together. So, what do we do? Mom asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear etched on her face. Aunt Clara smiled, a grim twist of her lips. We fight fire with fire, she said, rising from her chair. We'll eat some ingredients, herbs, sigils, maybe a pinch of wolfsbane. My stomach churned. Wolfsbane. This was going beyond a mere pep talk. Was Aunt Clara really suggesting an exorcism of sorts? Looking into her unwavering eyes, I knew the answer. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it was mixed with a fierce determination to protect Mom, to banish whatever darkness had latched onto me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fighting for the people we loved. All right, I said, my voice surprisingly firm. What do we need to do? Aunt Clara, a flicker of pride in her eyes, began to outline a plan. It was unconventional, laced with rituals and ancient symbology, but it was the only hope we had. For Mom, for myself, for a return to the world without shadows. And as we delved deeper into the strange world of her defenses, a sliver of hope, fragile yet persistent, began to bloom in my chest. Aunt Clara's makeshift laboratory, a converted attic room overflowing with jars, vials, and dusty tomes, buzzed with an unsettling energy. The air hung heavy with the pungent aroma of burning herbs and the cryptic chanting spilling from her lips as she drew elaborate symbols on a large sheet of parchment. Mom sat by my side, her pale face drawn tight with worry but a flicker of resolute determination in her eyes. We looked like participants in a bizarre, unsettling ritual scene from a forgotten movie. This is some serious Buffy the Vampire Slayer stuff, isn't it? I whispered, trying to lighten the mood. Mom forced a smile, but it faltered under the weight of the situation. More like Indiana Jones with incense, she replied, the hint of humor a welcome respite from the oppressive atmosphere. Aunt Clara didn't stop chanting. Guttural words I barely recognized, each syllable resonating with a strange power. As she finished, She picked up a vial filled with a shimmering blue liquid and carefully traced the sigils with it. "This is wolfsbane essence," she explained, her voice hoarse from the chant. "It should weaken the entity, make it vulnerable." "What happens then?" I asked, a note of apprehension tightening in my stomach. "That's where you come in," she replied, handing me a small, intricately carved wooden amulet. "This will help you focus your will, channel your courage to banish it." The amulet felt warm in my palm, a comforting weight against the rising fear. "And Mom?" Aunt Clara turned to her, a glint of respect in her eyes. "You have a role to play too. Your love, your connection to your daughter, is a powerful weapon. Together, you can force it back into the shadows." Mom took a deep breath, her hands gripping mine tightly. "We'll do it," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor running through her. Aunt Clara nodded, then pulled out a small pouch of white powder. "This is a mixture of blessed salt and dried sage. Sprinkle it around the room, especially where you felt the entity's presence." Following her instructions, I moved around the room, tracing a circle with the powder. The air crackled with a faint static energy, a tangible sign that the ritual was having an effect. Finally, Aunt Clara handed me a small, flickering candle. "Light it," she commanded. As the flames sputtered to life, casting dancing shadows on the cluttered room, a low growl echoed through the attic. A chill ran down my spine. The entity had noticed. The growl rose in volume, morphing into a series of guttural hisses, the sound emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. A flicker of darkness materialized in the corner, slowly coalescing into a shadowy figure, its form shifting and swirling like a living smoke cloud. The terror threatened to consume me, but Mom's grip on my hand tightened, anchoring me. Clenching the amulet, I focused my gaze on the darkness, drawing strength from her love, channeling it through the carved wood. "You're not welcome here," I roared, my voice shaking but laced with newfound determination. The entity writhed, the shadows contorting in a mockery of pain. Aunt Clara let out a sharp cry, throwing a handful of the white powder directly at the figure. It recoiled, a high-pitched shriek ripping through the room. Taking a deep breath, I focused, visualizing the entity being pushed back, banished to the void from where it came. With a final deafening screech, the figure dissolved into wisps of darkness, vanishing through a crack that appeared in the floorboards. Silence descended, heavy and thick. We stood there for a long moment, catching our breath, the remnants of the ritual clinging to the air. Aunt Clara, visibly drained, slumped into a chair, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. "It's gone," Mom whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Exhaustion and the aftershock of terror washed over me, leaving me numb and shaky. But amidst the fear, a sense of triumph, of a battle won, resonated within me. We had faced the nightmare, and together, we had banished it. As I looked at my mom, her face etched with fatigue but filled with a newfound glow, I knew this wasn't over. The scars of the experience would remain, but so would the unbreakable bond that carried us through. Sunlight streamed through the dusty attic window, casting a warm glow on the remnants of the night's ritual. The air still crackled with a faint, residual energy, a stark reminder of the terrifying encounter. Exhaustion draped itself over me like a heavy cloak. My limbs ached, and the amulet felt cold and inert in my palm, a stark contrast to the warmth it had exuded during the confrontation. Aunt Clara, slumped in a chair, looked no better. Dark circles accentuated her eyes, and her breath came in shallow rasps. Mom, however, seemed to have weathered the ordeal better. Perhaps fueled by the sheer relief of having the entity banished, she moved with a renewed energy, gathering the scattered ingredients and extinguishing the remaining embers in the brazier. "Are you sure it's gone for good?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Aunt Clara gave me a tired smile. "There's no such thing as for good when it comes to these things, honey. But for now, it's weakened, pushed back to the shadows. You've bought yourself some time." Time, a precious commodity, especially in Mom's case. It was a stark reminder of the bigger battle looming, a battle medicine couldn't win. "What about the reflection?" I asked, a lingering fear worming its way into my mind. "Do you think it's connected to the entity?" Aunt Clara frowned, her brow furrowing in thought. "It's possible. Reflections, doorways to other realms. Those are old stories, but sometimes there's truth in them." She fell silent, her gaze flickering to Mom, who was carefully placing the used vials back on a shelf. "This isn't over," Aunt Clara finally said, her voice soft but firm. "You need to be vigilant. Watch for any signs of its return." "We will," Mom said, her voice resolute. "We have to." The day stretched before us, filled with the mundane tasks of cleaning and returning Aunt Clara's borrowed items. Yet, a sense of normalcy, however fragile, began to seep back into the atmosphere. Later that evening, as Mom dozed on the couch, I sat beside her, the amulet clutched tightly in my hand. The events of the past few days replayed in my mind, a jumbled mess of fear and defiance. Reaching out, I tucked a stray strand of hair behind Mom's ear. Her skin, once vibrant, felt fragile and thin beneath my touch. A wave of protectiveness washed over me, stronger than any fear. This wasn't just about the entity anymore. It was about fighting for every stolen moment, for every shared laugh, for the precious time we had left together. "We'll get through this," I whispered, more to myself than to Mom. The words held the weight of hope, a promise etched in the face of uncertainty. Mom's eyelids fluttered open, a faint smile gracing her lips. "We always do," she murmured, squeezing my hand weakly. "And besides," she continued, her voice barely a whisper, "you've got a pretty good guardian angel now, wouldn't you say?" I looked down at the amulet, its warmth returning with a comforting thrum. Perhaps Aunt Clara was right. Maybe we weren't alone in this fight after all. With Mom by my side, and this newfound courage burning bright, I was ready to face whatever shadows may still lurk on the periphery. We had a fight ahead, but for the first time since the encounter at the airport, it felt like a fight we could win. Days settled into a fragile routine. The lingering chills of the encounter with the entity remained, a constant reminder of the darkness we pushed back. But a sense of normalcy, hard-won and fiercely guarded, began to weave itself back into the fabric of our lives. Mom's health, though still a cause for concern, seemed to have stabilized. The ordeal, however, had taken its toll. Her once vibrant energy had dimmed, replaced by a quiet fragility. We spent more time together, cherishing stolen moments of laughter and conversation, painting a vibrant tapestry of memories to counter the encroaching shadows. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, a comfortable silence settling around us, Mom spoke. "Have you seen the reflection again?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of apprehension. I shook my head, the image of the distorted face flashing briefly in my mind. "No," I lied, not wanting to worry her further. "Are you sure?" she persisted, her eyes searching mine. Lies tasted like ash on my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to burden her with my anxieties. The reflection had appeared a few times, fleeting glimpses in the corner of my vision, always whispering the same chilling words. "She's next." Despite my best efforts to push it away, the fear gnawed at me, a constant undercurrent to the calm facade I tried to maintain. I needed answers, and Aunt Clara seemed to be the only one with a grasp on the strange world we'd stumbled into. Maybe I should call Aunt Clara, I said, voicing the thought that had been churning in my mind. Mom's face mirrored my own unease. Are you sure? We don't want to bother her again unless it's absolutely necessary. But what if it is? I countered, my voice gaining strength with resolve. What if the entity is targeting you? What if the reflection? I trailed off, unable to voice the chilling message echoing in my head. Mom squeezed my hand, a glimmer of determination flickering in her eyes. Then we call Aunt Clara. We face this together, all of us. With a heavy heart, I dialed Aunt Clara's number. The wait felt interminable, each unanswered ring amplifying my anxieties. Just as I was about to hang up, a raspy voice crackled through the receiver. "Hello, Aunt Clara, it's me again," I stammered, launching into a hurried explanation of the recurring reflections and the chilling message. "Do you think it's trying to hurt Mom?" A long silence followed my rushed words. Finally, Aunt Clara spoke, her voice low and grave. "It's possible," she admitted. "The entity feeds on fear, and the closer you get to, well, let's just say it may try to exploit your vulnerabilities." "But what can we do?" I pleaded, desperation lacing my voice. A pause, then a sigh. "Come see me, honey," she said finally. "We may need another line of defense. But listen," she added, her voice softening. "Don't lose hope. The first blow was significant. We can fight this." Hope, a fragile ember, flickered within me. Hanging up, I looked at Mom, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We're going to see Aunt Clara again," I said, taking a deep breath. "We're going to fight back." Mom nodded, a steely glint in her gaze. "Together," she echoed, her voice stronger than it had been in days. The road ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty, but as we faced it together, hand in hand, the fear began to lose its grip. Armed with love, courage, and the enigmatic Aunt Clara's arsenal of unconventional methods, we were ready to face whatever nightmares lurked in the shadows. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, we weren't alone. The familiar scent of incense and dust greeted us as we stepped into Aunt Clara's rambling Victorian house. The air crackled with a nervous energy this time, a stark contrast to the determined aura clinging to Mom and me. "You came," Aunt Clara rasped, her age-worn face creased further with worry. "It seems the entity isn't wasting time." We settled wearily onto the threadbare armchairs, recounting the unnerving reappearance of the reflection and its chilling threat. As I spoke, Aunt Clara's brow furrowed, her gaze flickering to Mom with a flicker of concern. "It's exploiting your connection," she muttered, her voice heavy with worry. "The stronger your bond, the more vulnerable she becomes." A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. The entity was playing a cruel game, preying on our love for each other. "What can we do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Aunt Clara sighed, her gaze sweeping across the cluttered room before settling on a dusty book, tucked away on a high shelf. She retrieved it carefully, blowing away a layer of dust as she placed it on the low table before us. "This," she explained, tracing the intricate symbols on the cover, "is an ancient grimoire. It contains information on warding rituals, spells to create protective barriers." Hope, a flickering flame, ignited within me. "So you can create a shield around Mom?" Aunt Clara shook her head, her expression grim. "Not exactly. These spells require a connection, a source of power. Your father was adept at such things, but—" She trailed off, a melancholic silence settling for a moment. Tears welled up in Mom's eyes. We both missed Dad's quiet strength, his ability to face challenges head-on. But there might be another way, Aunt Clara continued, her gaze meeting mine. A way to use your fear, not as a weakness, but as a weapon. Fear as a weapon. The concept sounded ludicrous, yet a spark of curiosity flickered within me. Explain, I urged, leaning forward in my chair. Aunt Clara explained a complex ritual, a binding spell that would use the entity's own weapon, fear, to trap it. It was a risky maneuver, requiring precise focus and unwavering courage. It's dangerous, she warned, her voice laced with concern. The backlash could be significant. I looked at Mom, her face pale, but resolute. We have to try, she said, her voice surprisingly firm. We won't let it take her. The weight of her words settled heavily upon me. The fear threatened to cripple me, but Mom's unwavering love fueled a strength I didn't know I possessed. All right, I said, meeting Aunt Clara's gaze. Let's do this. Aunt Clara's lips curved into a grim smile. For the next few hours, we delved into the grimoire, deciphering ancient symbols, gathering the required ingredients, herbs, sigils etched on clay tablets, and a crystal pulsating with a faint blue light. As night fell, the atmosphere in the dimly lit room crackled with a nervous energy. Mom stood beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly. Her love was a shield, a source of strength anchoring me to the task at hand. Aunt Clara chanted in an archaic language, her voice resonating with power. I focused my fear, weaving it into the intricate ritual, transforming it from a crippling terror to a weapon of defiance. The room filled with an oppressive energy, the air thickening with tangible tension. Shadows seemed to writhe and dance in the flickering candlelight. Just as I began to doubt my ability to hold on to the focus, a screech pierced the silence. The reflection materialized in the corner, its distorted form writhing in fury. But this time, instead of fear, a cold anger burned within me. We won't let you hurt her, I roared, channeling all my emotions into the binding spell. The entity writhed, its form contorting as the spell took hold. Aunt Clara pushed the final incantation, her voice echoing with power. With a deafening shriek, the reflection imploded, vanishing into a swirling vortex of darkness. Exhaustion slammed into me like a tidal wave. My vision blurred and the room tilted alarmingly. Strong arms caught me as I stumbled. Mom's face, etched with concern and relief, swam into view. It's over, she whispered, her voice shaky but filled with love. I slumped against her, the last vestiges of fear and adrenaline draining away. The ritual had been a success, but the experience left me emotionally and physically drained. As dawn painted the sky with the soft hues of pink and orange, a wave of relief washed over me. The oppressive energy had lifted, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. We huddled together on Aunt Clara's worn couch, the exhaustion a heavy blanket over our bodies. Are you sure it worked? I asked, my voice barely a rasp. Aunt Clara nodded, a weary smile gracing her lips. The grimoire was clear. The binding spell should hold for a while. But remember, these entities are cunning. We have to remain vigilant. Disappointment flickered across Mom's face. For a while, she echoed, the words hanging heavy in the air. The reality of the situation, the temporary respite bought at such a high cost, sank in. Mom's illness, the ever-present shadow lurking at the periphery, felt more daunting than ever. Sensing the shift in mood, Aunt Clara reached out and squeezed Mom's hand. Don't lose hope, she said, her voice soft yet firm. We may not have a cure, but we can fight for every stolen moment. There's still time to make memories, to cherish each other. Her words, laced with a quiet wisdom, carried a weight of truth. We couldn't rewrite fate, but we could control how we faced it. Looking down at Mom, her tired yet determined eyes met mine. We had faced a nightmare and emerged stronger, our bond forged in the crucible of fear. "We'll fight," I promised, my voice choked with emotion. "Together." A tear escaped Mom's eye, but a smile, fragile yet genuine, bloomed on her lips. "Together," she echoed. The journey ahead remained uncertain, shrouded in the looming shadow of her illness. But as we left Aunt Clara's house, the rising sun painting the world in a hopeful glow, a newfound strength resonated within me. Fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer held the reins. We had faced the darkness and emerged with our love intact, a defiant flame against the ever-present shadows. The fight wasn't over, but as we walked hand in hand toward the unknown, we carried a flicker of hope, a testament to the unwavering power of love in the face of darkness. Days turned into weeks, then months. The encounter with the entity remained a vivid memory, a chilling reminder of the unseen forces that lurked just beyond the veil. But life settled into a fragile normalcy. Mom's health, though still a concern, seemed to plateau. The treatments, combined with the knowledge that we weren't alone in our fight, brought a glimmer of hope back into her eyes. We spent our days cherishing stolen moments, laughing, reminiscing, creating a tapestry of memories to counter the encroaching shadows. One evening, as Mom sat curled up on the couch, a book in her lap, I noticed a faint flicker of anxiety creeping into her eyes. "Honey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "have you seen the reflection?" Again. My heart sank. I hadn't seen it myself, but I knew the question haunted her. "No, Mom," I lied, forcing a smile. The lie felt heavy on my tongue, but I couldn't bear to see the fear plough her already fragile state. The truth was, there had been glimpses, fleeting images in the corner of my vision, always whispering the same chilling message. Almost time. The fear gnawed at me, a constant undercurrent beneath the veneer of normalcy. We needed answers, and Aunt Clara seemed to be our only connection to the strange world we'd stumbled into. "Maybe I should call Aunt Clara in," I ventured, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Mom frowned. "Are you sure? We don't want to bother her unless it's absolutely necessary." "But what if it is?" I argued, frustration mingling with fear. "What if the entity is back? What if it—" I trailed off, unable to voice the chilling message echoing in my head. Mom reached out and squeezed my hand, her touch a grounding force amidst the swirling anxieties. "We'll face it together," she said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in weeks. "But first, let's call her. We need to know what we're up against." With a heavy heart, I dialed Aunt Clara's number. The wait felt interminable, each unanswered ring amplifying my anxieties. Just as I was about to hang up, a voice rasped from the receiver. "Hello, Aunt Clara, it's me again," I stammered, launching into a hurried explanation of the recurring glimpses of the reflection and its ominous message. Silence followed my words, a silence so thick it felt tangible. Finally, Aunt Clara spoke, her voice laced with concern. "Stay calm," she commanded. "It might be a bluff, a tactic to test your defenses." "But what if it's not?" I countered, panic edging into my voice. "What if it's coming for your mother?" Aunt Clara finished the sentence, her voice grave. A choked sob escaped Mom's lips, and I squeezed her hand tighter, willing myself to stay strong. "Don't worry," Aunt Clara continued, her voice firm despite the weight of her words. "The binding spell weakens the entity, but it doesn't eliminate it. We need to reinforce the shield, make it even stronger." Relief washed over me, a temporary reprieve from the crushing fear. We can do that. There's a possibility, Aunt Clara admitted. But it requires. She hesitated, the silence stretching on. Requires what? I pressed, my voice laced with urgency. Finally, Aunt Clara spoke, her voice low and grave. It requires a sacrifice. The word sacrifice hung heavy in the air, a chilling counterpoint to the crackling fire in the fireplace. Mom's face, pale and drawn, mirrored the fear that constricted my chest. A sacrifice, I stammered, the word tasting like ash on my tongue. What kind of sacrifice? Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Aunt Clara spoke, her voice laced with a weary resignation. The grimoire mentions a tethered offering, she explained, an object imbued with your mother's essence, something precious, something that binds her to this world. Something precious, Mom echoed, her voice trembling slightly. She glanced around the room, her gaze lingering on cherished photographs and knickknacks. But wouldn't that weaken her? I questioned, fear twisting into a knot in my stomach. The thought of taking something precious from Mom, something that fueled her spirit, felt wrong. Not necessarily, Aunt Clara countered. The offering would act as a beacon, drawing the entity's attention away from your mother herself. The stronger the connection to her essence, the more effective the decoy. My mind raced, picturing Mom's favorite necklace, the warm teddy bear from her childhood, the delicate china teacup she cherished. Each item held memories, a tangible thread to her life force. But what happens to the offering? I asked, the question heavy with dread. Aunt Clara's gaze met mine, a steely glint in her eyes. It's consumed, destroyed by the entity. But if it buys us time to strengthen the shield, then it's a small price to pay. A small price. The sacrifice felt anything but. But the alternative, losing Mom to the clutches of the entity, was unthinkable. We have to do it, Mom whispered, her voice resolute despite the tremor running through it. Anything to buy us more time. Her words, laced with a quiet strength, resonated within me. We didn't have a choice. This was a fight for her life, for the remaining time we had together. The next few days were filled with a heavy silence. We sifted through Mom's belongings, each item a poignant reminder of her life, her journey. Finally, Mom's gaze fell on a simple, leather-bound journal tucked away on a dusty shelf. This, she said, her voice thick with emotion. It's filled with memories, dreams, stories from my childhood. A piece of me, a part of my soul. Picking up the journal, she ran her fingers lovingly over the worn cover. Tears welled up in her eyes, a silent goodbye to a cherished part of her past. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom nodded, a steely resolve replacing the sadness in her eyes. It's for the best, she whispered, forcing a smile. The following night, we returned to Aunt Clara's house, the weight of the sacrifice heavy on our hearts. The ritual was complex, a weaving of symbols and chants that filled the air with a potent energy. As Aunt Clara chanted the final incantation, the journal in her hand pulsed with a faint light. Then, with a sharp crackle, it vanished, consumed by an unseen force. Silence descended upon the room, heavy and thick. Exhaustion draped itself over us like a cloak, but beneath it, a flicker of hope remained. It's done, Aunt Clara rasped, her voice strained. The decoy is out there. Let's hope it's enough. We left Aunt Clara's house that night, the weight of the sacrifice a constant presence, but there was a renewed determination in our steps, fueled by the precious time we'd hopefully bought. The road ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty, but as we walked hand in hand, the image of Mum's selfless act, her willingness to sacrifice a piece of herself for a chance at more time, burned bright in my mind. It was a reminder of the strength of love, a defiant flame against the encroaching shadows. We didn't know what the future held, but together we were ready to face it, armed with love, courage, and the unrevealing hope that flickered like a fragile ember in the darkness.